If you did not hear, as I struggle with technology, Lisa is a retired claims specialist. She worked for the Social Security Administration for years. She is a Marine mom, as well as engaged to a Marine who served in Vietnam. And she has a lot to share with us this evening as it relates to disability benefits. So how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Eugene.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. We talked a little bit the other day about some of the challenges that people are facing, not only here in the COVID era, but just in general as far as them getting benefits. And I'll read you a description and maybe you can speak to it a little bit. I looked up what is SSDI, and it reads like this. It's a social insurance program with which that workers can earn coverage for benefits by working and paying Social Security taxes on their earnings. The program provides benefits to disabled workers and to their dependents. For those who can no longer work due to a disability, the disability program is there to replace some of their lost income. And so you know a lot about this because you've worked for the administration for years. Tell us what goes into getting benefits to begin with. And also the second part of that, and I'll remind you, what defines a disability in the system? So answer those two for us.
Okay. So first of all, there's a lot that goes into getting the benefits. First of all, wow, that description. I try to say to people, it's kind of like you pay your homeowner's insurance premiums, right? Then your roof blows off. What do? You call your adjuster and say, hey, listen, I need all that money that I paid to you because my roof blew off and I need to fix it. So it's very similar with Social Security. You pay those FICA taxes, those Social Security taxes as you're working. And if you become unable to continue working, you're going to file an insurance claim. That's what SSDI is, Social Security Disability Insurance. So yes, it's a social insurance program. And of course, it's not going to be the same amount of money as you earned working. It's significantly less, but nevertheless, it's helpful. And ultimately, it comes with Medicare health insurance. So we typically think about Medicare as being 65 years old. That's when you get it. Well, guess what? If you're disabled and you get approved for Social Security disability, you can get it, in your 30s in that case. So in terms of what qualifies people, number one, people tend to think about SSDI as permanent, right? This is the permanent disability. And yes, it can be. So somebody can get it and stay on it for their entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's an earned benefit. But for a lot of people, myself included, it's not permanent, right? So the minimum requirement, the minimum basic requirement is that you have to be either unable to work entirely or your work is severely restricted because of your disabling conditions. And you have to have the expectation that that is going to last for a minimum of a year. And for a lot of the people that I work with, they've actually been out of work already for sometimes, well over a year. So just that reasonable expectation that you're going to be out of work for a minimum of a year. And if you want to know, how do I know, have a conversation with your doctor, right? Doctors typically have some feedback on that issue. They can say, hey, we think your prognosis is such that, you're probably going to be out of work for at least a year. So a lot of people go on SSDI and then, can focus on themselves, their treatment. They have some more financial stability, so they don't have so much anxiety around that. And, they maybe feel better. They maybe feel good enough to kind of give that work thing a shot again. So a lot of people do go back to work, whether that's part-time, kind of staying under that threshold to keep their benefits, or they just go, full on and actually end up coming off of Social Security disability. And Social Security has a really fair and reasonable process for that. They don't just take your check away from you the minute you try to go back to work. So that's one of the things they do good, do correctly, well, I should say.
So what are people typically, what ails them that they're applying for the benefit? Is it car wrecks? Is it diabetes? Is it kidney disease? What qualifies typically, and maybe what doesn't?
Okay, so there are a lot of conditions that qualify, both physically and mentally. The criteria has to do with not just having that condition, but the symptoms that you have. Do you have that list of symptoms that they're looking for to qualify you? And more importantly, how limited are you? Are you limited to the point because of this condition that, you can't work, right? You can't engage in any kind of substantial work. So you could have two people suffering, let's say, from diabetes, right? One of them is functional, goes to work, no problem. That person is not going to qualify. Then you have somebody else who has out of control diabetes with all the attending other issues that come along with that, and they may not be able to work. So it depends on severity and limitations as well as the condition itself. Now, something interesting, first of all, you can get disability for physical conditions, you can get it for mental conditions, you can get it for a combination of the two. Something interesting for yourself as a veteran and me working with a lot of veterans is PTSD, which is, something that certainly a good number of veterans struggle with, civilians as well, is something that Social Security did not recognize as a potentially disabling condition until 2017.
And why is that, when clearly our nation has been in a lot of conflicts, and certainly over the years, they should have the data that supports that these men and women that have served are traumatized by either what they've been through, their injuries, what they've seen. Why do you think that is the case that has taken this long?
I don't really know. I think part of it depends on what groups decide to lobby to change rules. Right now we're obviously dealing with COVID. I'm very interested to see what happens. Is long haul COVID going to be added as a potentially disabling condition? Who knows? It's one of those squeaky wheels get the grease type of situations when it comes to certain conditions. There are conditions that are kind of an automatic approval, if you will, as long as the documentation is there. So an example of that would be ALS. ALS is really well known. There's a lot of money behind it. Whatever it is that they did to kind of say to Social Security, hey, this should be a presumptive, approval with you guys. That's what they did. But that list of potentially disabling conditions is kind of constantly being updated. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that PTSD didn't get added until 2017. There are conditions that are not technically on the list, but you can still argue those from a functional standpoint. So if they make you functionally disabled, you still can argue those. So a few examples of that would be migraines. If migraines incapacitate you and you have documentation of that, you certainly could argue that. Sleep apnea is one. Most people with sleep apnea, they can be treated with a CPAP. It's mitigated, you're okay, but there are some people that can't use a CPAP. And, sleep deprivation is no joke. It makes you functionally, not really able to function mentally and physically if you're deprived of enough sleep. So certainly that can be argued as well. That would be another example. Fibromyalgia, personally, I think that should be on the list. It's not. But again, there's a way to argue that. from a
Right.
functional standpoint. So, yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people, as we know, globally, especially in this country, who deal with a lot of injuries, a lot of mental stress and problems they've undergone. When I was in the military, and I think you primarily deal with just the military at this point, right?
I actually work with civilians as well, but
Okay.
my joy is to work with military folks. People med boarding out of the military can file in a lot of cases, not all of them, but most of them, and veterans. So that's just, my zone of where I like to be and who I really like to help. But I can help anybody. It's just that is typically my focus, those and also first responders. So.
Okay. So what I was going to say was, when I was in the military, I was in Germany years ago, and I went to airborne school twice and hurt my back a little bit during both schools. And then we were at our caserne, we were at our unit, and we were having a sale on furniture. And so civilians would come to the base and military people, and we would sell off the government's furniture. And so I picked up a large chair, sofa chair, if you will, and I was helping the older lady out to the car. I said, no, I'll get it. I'll just carry it. I'm young, strong. I'll carry the whole chair. Is wide and, off balance.
Awkward.
Yes, very awkward. And I was looking and I saw that there was a puddle, and I had my spit shine boots on, and I didn't want to step in the puddle. So I stepped over the puddle. Ooh. The weight shifted. I found myself in the hospital just outside of K-Town, Germany, in Landstuhl Hospital, flat on my face with someone on my back trying to rub out the twisted muscles. I say all that to say it seemed like it took years for my back to be better. And I don't know if it was a function of airborne school and some of the other trauma to the back or some of the things that I've experienced while in the service, but they always told you in the military that, listen, anything that happens to you, you better, and I'll grab it. I know I've got it here somewhere. You
better document that.
Your medical records. So literally, I've been out of the service for more than 2 decades. But what do I have here? My records for medical. And this whole entire stack of military records, because I have heard over the years that so many people, military, struggle to get the benefits that they are entitled to. So how do you, Lisa, go about helping people like me or my father, who was in the 30 years in the military, 2 tours in Vietnam? He got X amount for his military medical benefit retirement plus his 30-year retirement. So he's almost at 100% of what he was working for. How do you help people who, come back from war, who suffer from PTSD or they've injured themselves? How do you help them get the benefits that they deserve? What's that process like?
Oh, first of all, I do a lot of basic educating on what the just like what I did for when we first started talking, what is the definition of this? Is this something you should be filing for? Would you be eligible for it? So I have a lot of those conversations. And I also, military mindset, right? A lot of you don't go to the doctor and don't get seen because you're discouraged from doing that in the military, right? Suck it up. Just keep on going here. Don't be that weak link. Don't be that guy, right? So sometimes there aren't records for quite a while. I actually had a conversation today with a veteran who said, I've been sucking it up and I'm not sure that I have enough. So we had a conversation about how he can now get some things documented, in preparation for filing his claim. Get yourself to the providers, talk about your symptoms, talk about your limitations. Sometimes I'll recommend a vocational assessment. That's not cheap, but in some cases it's really, really helpful. I don't, make anything off doing that. It's just sometimes it's the right thing to do. So in this case, that may be appropriate for this individual. For most people, they don't need that, but for this individual who just, he was an E9 in the Air Force and just sucked it up,
Right.
So, and then I walk people through what some of their challenges might be, what the particulars are, or how to argue their particular conditions, and how to overcome those areas of the system that just break down. So, for example, what Social Security will tell people when they file is, hey, don't worry about a thing. We're going to send away for your medical records. Now, that is not a lie. Okay. Medical records will be sent for. But what I discovered when I was working there and had to process, thousands of denials that came back from the agency that made the decision was, oh my gosh, yeah, they requested the medical records, but one of the following scenarios was happening. They either weren't getting them, they weren't getting enough of them, enough of the critical good stuff. They, in the case where there are some veterans claims that get expedited. So in that case, yeah, they maybe got the evidence or the records, but they got it too late after they'd already denied this individual. And also you're talking about people who in a lot of cases have a tremendous amount of medical records. My vets that are 100% permanent in total, IU, individual unemployability. These folks can have just thousands of pages of records. And, with any claim, they don't have a whole lot of time to look at it. But with the expedited claims, they have so little time to look at this stuff. So I help people to understand, what to give them, right? You can't just throw everything at them. That's a terrible strategy, right? And I love to say to my military people, because they just get it. I always say to them, okay, I understand that there's, weird information on the internet about this stuff. And if you talk to people, you're going to get 6 different answers or more, right? But would you ever go into battle with an enemy that you didn't know anything about, that you had no idea what their weapons were, no idea what their strategy was? You have no strategy of your own, no weapons of your own, and no battle buddy to be with you in the process. You wouldn't do that. No. But I see so many people just go, well, Social Security tells me to file online. I'll go do that. And then I hope I get approved. That is not a strategy. That is not a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy.
No, it's not. And unfortunately, Social Security has really pushed this online filing thing because it saves them so much money not to have to pay somebody like me to sit and interview someone. But it's really been to the detriment of the claimants, the people that are trying to get these benefits, and especially veterans, because veterans tend to think inside of the VA disability box. So when you say to a veteran, what are you disabled for? Where does their mind go? Oh, wait a minute. What did the VA tell me I'm disabled for? Right. But the VA is only giving them compensation for things that are service connected. And sometimes they're not even properly compensating them for service connected stuff. So that means that the veteran may be leaving out significant, information, conditions, things like that, because they're going, well, I guess that's not legitimate because the VA didn't rate me for that. No, that might be really important for Social Security disability. So these are the types of conversations that, that I have, and the type of educating that I do, in this space with veterans.
So where do you do that at? How can folks reach you? Because I know you have a course that they can purchase. Yep. And it's beyond reasonable, the price point, because you help people get hundreds or thousands of dollars back on a regular increase to their net income, which is life-changing money. And that I've encouraged you over the months to look at raising that price. So how can someone who's listening whether they're a civilian or they're a military member, or even a military member who may be getting out. Tell us how they can interact with you anonymously, within your community, and tell us how, again, a civilian or a veteran could interact with you and get a chance to at least have a
Get some
consultation.
help.
Mhm.
Okay. So basically there's two ways that I help people right now. So I do one-on-one consultations, which are individualized, talking about that person's particular conditions and challenges and circumstances. That's a full consultation, A to Z, everything I know about how to file a great claim and how to really increase your chances of getting approved. I had to go through the process myself. And I got approved the first time I tried because I knew what I was doing. And they don't make it easy for people that worked there. They make it very hard. So a consultation, I do have those available for civilians, for military, for, anybody. And I have a course right now that has specifically been designed for veterans. I don't currently have a civilian course, although I will. Okay. So the course is just for veterans, and it is, walking them through that process. And they have access to me in the course. They have access to me on the Convene platform, which is where the course is. I have a community, and inside of the community is where the course group is. And there's a discussion board where they can jump on the discussion board as they go through the process and ask me questions. So if I've told them something in the course and their experience is different, somebody at Social Security tells them something different, usually it's wrong, I can certainly jump on and say, hey, no, that's not right. They're giving you wrong information. Here's the rule. Ask for a supervisor, or whatever it is I need to tell them. So, currently I just have the course for veterans, but as I said, at some point I will have one for civilians as well. So I offer a free 20-minute call with anybody that wants to talk to me about eligibility, what challenges they might face, and for me to kind of give them some very basic stuff like I did in the beginning of this call. Right? So that's free. And the best way to get in touch with me as far as that goes is on my website, which is ssdiinsidersecrets.com. And they can schedule a call with me. Also on my website is a link to the course. So for those veterans, it doesn't link them directly to the course because obviously they need to pay for that, but it will link them into my community where I have some free content, some things that they can look at. I do also have some videos on my website that answer certainly some questions for people, 8 common myths and misconceptions about Social Security, disability, things like that. So best thing to do probably is to schedule a 20-minute call with me. We can figure out, is this something you should be doing? What challenges might you face? And am I a good fit for you to work with me? So that's what I do.
Very good. So again, it's ssdiinsider.com.
No.
And they
ssdiinsidersecrets.com.
Thank you. We'll put that in the description box below for the YouTube video as well as in this thread. Thank you for being here tonight, Lisa. Thank you very, very much for all that you do, having served in the Army for years as an enlisted member and as an officer during the first Gulf War, having a father who served for 30 years. My stepmother served for over 20 years. I come from a military family, and we kind of know how some of this stuff has played out over the years where military vets have not gotten the kind of service that they should be getting, whether that's for, the VAs around the country or getting the benefits that they certainly deserved and earned. So thank you for doing all that you do to be able to help us and to help civilians as well get what they deserve, being that guiding light to help them get through the system. So I certainly want to thank you for that. And I mean that sincerely. So if you guys need to reach Lisa, it's ssdiinsidersecrets.com. And I'll put all that information in the description box below. that's
Great.
going to be it for tonight, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another show called The Money Show, where we talk all things stocks, money, and entrepreneurship. Our guest this evening was Lisa Hiering, who runs her company SSDI. And if you need to reach her, again, the information will be in the description box below. Join us next week. We're going to have some folks on the podcast. We'll be talking all things real estate. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being here. Have a good night.